former Education Secretary, Chancellor of the Exchequer, and of course he chaired the Conservative Party, Nadhim Zahawi, the great Zahawi, sitting opposite me in the LBC studio. It's good to see you, Mr.
Good morning,
Zahawi.
Nick. How
Is it
are
right? You crashed the internet or something?
For probably about 48 hours.
Why? Why did you suppose
everything, I guess, a slow news day maybe, I don't know.
Right,
but it was an important moment. It was an important moment for me, certainly.
Yeah. Tell us about the courtship.
So I tell you, look, even before the courtship, if you think about country ahead of party, if you think of your family, your community, your country, as James Orr would tell you, there's only one conclusion you can come to, and that is we've got to get round Nigel Farage, build capacity, build experience, a team that can actually hit the ground running, because the current lot, I mean, I have to say, there's a lot to apologise for the previous administration, which I was part of, and as you just quite rightly outlined, I was Education Secretary, Chancellor of the Exchequer. A lot went wrong in the end, but it took us 14 years. I mean, this lot's taking them, 18 months? I can't believe every morning I wake up, and I mean, what happened last night with Chris Wormald, who's the most senior civil servant? This guy is Cabinet Secretary. I mean, the machine doesn't work if there's no Cabinet Secretary.
We'll come to that.
It's extraordinary. So anyway, my reflection was, look, I can either leave the country and be, one of these Milan or Monaco or I can fight for my country. So it's fight or flight. And
but you mentioned
Nigel,
Mr. Farage.
Yeah,
and once said, you know what's coming.
I know. Once I said I'll never be able to live with Nigel.
I'm as British as you. I would be frightened to live in a country run by you. Well, that's quite a change.
Yes, and when the facts change, you change your mind. And Nigel and I met several times, introduced by Nick Candy, and I watched him on the international stage. Impressed me enormously. He was not a sycophant, wasn't overwhelmed by extraordinary Middle Eastern wealth or anything else that he saw before him. He pushed back when he needed to, but also when he saw the facts on the infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood, which I had spent quite a while showing him, I sent the same evidence to Kemi and to Rob, who were both obviously Conservatives then. Didn't hear back from Kemi. Rob came back, said Robert Jenrick came back, said very sensible, but I just don't think the Conservatives have got appetite for this. Nigel came straight back, said, look, let's look into more details. Let's put a small team and look at this properly. And then I get a phone call saying, I'm going to put it in my speech at the party conference. And it'll be a pledge by Reform that we will prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood in our country. And I thought that was impressive. My membership lapsed in December. I allowed it to lapse in the Conservative Party. And then make the big decision early in January to come across.
Well, it is a big decision. You said some years ago, been a Conservative all my life and will die a Conservative. Was it almost like a death in the family? Or I know you've not been divorced, or divorced,
It's huge. But again, I say this to you, I think this is the last chance this country's got to turn things round.
Why the last chance, Mrs.
Because I tell you why. The economy is in
speech, by the way, from someone who was Chancellor and chaired the party.
Well, the economy is in terrible shape. We celebrate no growth or anemic growth when the US economy, and people tell us, but big economies don't grow the way the sort of the global south is growing. Not true. Look at the US economy, incredible growth coming through. Our streets are not safe. I know people like, Fraser Nelson will tell you that murder rates are down. But the reality is, you try and walk anywhere in London, Manchester, Birmingham, anywhere, you don't feel safe, right? You look at what happened in Birmingham with the Aston Villa Maccabi Tel Aviv match. Who is controlling our streets? Certainly not the police force in that case. All that stuff needs fixing, in my view. Immigration, any other country in the world, and I've done many jobs, I've travelled around the world, that gets 66,000 illegal men of fighting age from some of the worst war zones, worst places in the world, they'd call it a national emergency. It'd be like the pandemic, right? The Prime Minister would go on television, we have a national emergency, we're going to enact national emergency legislation to stop this. We just
what would that
live with
legislation
it.
be, Mr. Zahawi? How would you stop it?
I can tell you very, very strict. When I was in cabinet, right, and I was then running the cabinet office, we had to come out from the European Convention on Human Rights. You can't do it otherwise, because actually, even a derogation, some of my colleagues, Ben Wallace was saying last night, but you could have a derogation. It's rubbish, right? You've got to come out, because what will happen is the lawyers will tie you up in knots in the courts. Nothing will happen, right? If those people coming across know that within 24 hours they're being processed in Rwanda, right, they won't come across.
You'd bring back Rwanda?
I would, or a similar sort of process, offshore processing, right? What we can't have is what we've got at the moment is literally, just think about this, 66,000 men of fighting age from the worst places in the world are living in hotels. They're going to move them out of hotels because it's a PR spin thing, right? Put them in HMOs, houses in multiple occupancy, to then... we have a government that basically is run by press release.
You're sounding like a political equivalent of Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Is he right what he said?
He was right. I think...
choice of words?
I don't know whether you saw my tweet at 6 a.m. When I saw the headlines. I think there's one word that you can argue he could have chosen a better word.
The word being colonised,
but ultimately, right, if you've got 12 million people that have come in between 2000, right, you got his dates wrong slightly.
He meant 2000, not 2020,
right.
in a sense.
12 million people, as my great friend Rob Jenrick said yesterday, more people have come in from the time Tony Blair took office to today than the previous 1,000 years. 12 million people is an extraordinary thing to happen to any culture, any country. Walk down the Edgware Road, Nick. Walk down, parts of Birmingham. Walk down, lots of parts of our country. You wouldn't recognise them. I would much rather see, like my parents did, integrate, right? Be proud of this country. You come here. If you come here, you should absolutely absorb our culture.
Is it the fault of the folk living in Bradford and Leicester and Blackburn? Is it their fault? Why is it that they're not integrated?
Well, I think it's a combination of a government that's always, both local government and central government, shied away from being muscular
about... You chaired the party that
I don't disagree with you. And I say to you, we made I said it in my tweet about Jim Ratcliffe, we made a terrible error on allowing migration to rise to almost 1 million people a year net, right? That was a mistake, and you have to admit your mistakes before you can fix them in the first place, right? It's the scoundrels today... the Lib Dems, Labour, the Greens would want all of us just to focus on, this is terrible racism. Isn't it awful? People are going to be offended. Footballers might be even offended. Well, actually, the footballers, I would say to you, are the sort of immigrants you want because they pay big taxes here. Look at the UAE, right? They've got a 10-to-1 ratio of immigrant to local indigenous people, right? 10-to-1. But the local people love it. They celebrate it. They back their government. Why? Because the 10, 11 million immigrants have jobs. But they pay the taxes, indirect taxes, which are very efficient taxes in many ways, right? And when they don't have a job, they have to go home.
Yours is the classic British success story, in that you came to this country. I don't think you even spoke a word of English when you arrived here.
Yeah.
And you've gone on, you've held great offices as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Many would say you are A, you're punching down now, and B, you're displaying signs of racism.
Quite the opposite. I want actually a healthy society where we celebrate immigration. We bring the best and the brightest from the world. In fact, they're going the other way. It's not just the billionaires and non-doms and millionaires that have left these shores and are living in Dubai and UAE and elsewhere. It's the young talent, the 30 to 50-year-olds who've decided they're going to make home somewhere else because they can't actually... keep most of their hard-earned wealth in their bank account. I want to celebrate the best immigration. What we've got at the moment is low-skilled migration in the millions, right? That's probably... It's by the way, it's unsustainable. Nick, we will go bankrupt. Right?
Well, isn't that the point? I mean, where
we
you
have
and
to
I
have this
differ.
debate. I thank Jim Ratcliffe because actually his misspeaking has actually raised the debate to a level where we're actually, people like Nigel saying, hold on a second, let's talk about this. Let's just discuss, is this really sustainable, or should we have a big change in our country about how we deal with migration?
Can I put my clumsy interpretation of events here, because the first part of what Sir Jim said about 9 million people is unsustainable is right, and it's rather convenient for the Labour Party, such as Rachel Reeves, to pile in on the, I would say, wrong use of the word colonised.
Correct.
Because that means we lose all sight of what the point Sir Jim was trying to say.
Because it's what scoundrels do. They hide, because the reality is to deal with the problem is much more difficult. Much more difficult, right? It's much easier.
So now we can write off everything Sir Jim said.
He's a racist. This is terrible. It's nothing to do with that. It's to do with a healthy society, a community that is cohesive and celebrates what is best about our country.
Do you feel safe in London?
No. I've got to tell you.
And for your children?
Yesterday, I walked from my home in one of the most
well-heeled,
upmarket, you can call it, areas of London, and an individual walked past me. I literally walked off the pavement into the middle of the road, kept a very close eye at 8 a.m., right?
What was this individual? Did he appear to be drunk? Did he appear to be aggressive?
He just looked, like, he hadn't slept for, a week, and just looked like somebody that might be violent. I don't know. But I just walked away from the pavement to walk, and I'm a big guy. Right?
Yes, you are.
And I don't feel safe that my 13-year-old can walk in London. That can't be right. We have to basically send a very clear message to every police force that if you need additional help, the weasel words from the West Midland Police Force was only because they took the soft option. It's the same with the rape gangs, right? The reason they never dealt with it at the time, because it's too difficult, because, we might be labelled racist. That's why they didn't actually take those poor girls seriously. It's awful. And it happens all the time. Do you remember that poor cinema manager who was showing a film that offended a group of people, who then went and was supposed to be coming to talk to him, but of course all had their faces covered and were very aggressive. They took the film off. Why? Right? No, that was during our administration, right? I would have done the opposite. I would have said, if I were, and I regret not doing this stuff. If I were Home Secretary, I'd be calling the Chief of Police saying, listen, if you need help, we'll send the army in, right? We have to send a very clear message to every community that you can't just go on the streets and threaten others. This is as punchy as I've ever known you. So the last minute or so we've got together, you're only going to be able to help put this right if you're part of a reform administration. So you're going to seek election again as an MP, you're going to go to the other place. What's going to happen? Whatever Nigel decides, ultimately, in many ways, what I like about what I see from Nigel is he has a very clear agenda. He wants to be... So you're going to the Lords? I don't know. And you whatever he decides that he'd like me to do, I will do. I want to be part of that team that walks into number 10 and actually gets things done. But you'll have to be in the House of Lords to do that, wouldn't you? It's really... Ultimately, the decision is for the party leader, if and when we win the election. You sound like a frustrated Home Secretary at the moment. Well, I'm very frustrated because I worry about my country. I want this country to be the best country in the world. I want people to be investing. I want growth to be at 3, 4, 5%. So Andrew's former Chancellor, Mr. Zahawi, and Andrew's sentence, someone you probably know well, Bank of England policymaker. Britain is facing its most dismal decade in a century. It's awful. Businessman and Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi. It's broken, but it can be fixed. And we will fix it at reform. Lastly, you rightly referenced, I think it's now 3 key posts around the Prime Minister, all gone within the space of a week, so Chris Wilmot leave. It does seem an extraordinary place now, number 10, doesn't it? He's in office but not in power. Correct. It's a government that basically currently is run by press release. There's no one there. Where is the Prime Minister going out there and saying, right, here's my vision, here's what I'll deliver, hold me to account. If I don't deliver these things, I will step away, right? Doesn't say that. He says, I want to fight for this thing. He's being buffeted by his own majority. Just think about it for a second. I know. Angela Rayner, Boris Johnson was meant to have a massive held majority, a party, and you can ask her this question, right? In number 10 and number 11, right? When she passed the job-destroying bill, that I call it, right? The act that will absolutely destroy jobs in this country because small, medium, large businesses will be much more reluctant to employ people. Do you know what they sang? The red flag. And you can ask her that question, right? That's the state of affairs in our country. Passing a bill that would destroy jobs and singing the red flag and thinking that's how we're going to get growth back in. It is... If it wasn't so sad, it would be laughable.
It would be the thick of it, wouldn't it? Well, I've got to go. We've got to get to headlines. Thank you so much for coming by for the first broadcast. Nadhim Zahawi here on LBC 849, LBC News.